Let's get started. So most of you in the chat said you'd been here for sessions before, but I'll do a quick intro. My name's Adam. I'm the vertical manager of music and audio here at Fiverr. I come from the world of production, audio engineering, been producing my whole life. So super excited for this talk in particular. I am excited to have Avery here. Avery is a professional producer and composer. I'll let him kind of go a bit more into it once we begin. But he's also a Fiverr pro and has done some amazing things in his career. We're going to be talking about all things kind of freelance composing, what it takes to make it, and Avery's tips and tricks, and really anything that you guys are interested in us covering. But on that note, Avery, it would be awesome if you could introduce yourself and explain a bit about your story.
Yeah, so thank you for that. So my name's Avery Berman. I've been producing music since about 2008. I first started with I'll give you the mercifully short version, but I started playing guitar with my brother in 2007. We played some coffee shops, realized I fell in love with music. By 2010, I was releasing music on YouTube under an alias at that time called The Ground Above. I did a little bit of advertising, figured stuff out, did some emailing of people, and built the channel up to over 1 million views, won 2 awards through that, got recognized from the Senate, which actually right behind me is, those are the awards, and that's the Senate thing. But from there, basically, shortly after that, I started working with a partner named Will, who couldn't be here today, but very talented, of course, composer, producer as well. And we both started getting into music licensing together. It was something that we realized had more opportunity for growth, especially monetarily. And so we really kind of started to do a lot of stock music and studying how do we write music that has function and purpose. And that was a really big thing because previously both of us had been artists. He was in a band, I was doing a YouTube thing. But transitioning towards being professional composer producers was definitely different. And so we studied a lot of tracks on popular stock music sites and advertising, and really learned how they functioned and worked to recreate them, and really just stocked one of our stores in that time on Audio Jungle with tons and tons of tracks that we would finish, and it really helped kickstart us. And so since 2014, we've been doing that, and also, of course, freelance work. So both of us really, but I'll speak for me because I'm here. I've done a lot of different stuff. So I've been a ghost producer for DJs. I have done brand films and advertising, custom music for that. I have done tracks for both signed and unsigned pop artists. I've done video game composition work. And so I've even done a track for a comedian before. So it's just kind of all across the board. I just love working on all kinds of projects, and whatever I can share, I'm happy to just share whatever I can.
Love that. Awesome. And I'll say quickly that I'm gonna start asking some questions, but if you guys have questions, put it in the Q&A, and we'll definitely get to as many as we can. But let's start a bit from the beginning. You touched a bit about your band and getting started. What was your training like in the world of music and production? Was it all self-taught? Did you go to school for it? What did that look like?
So yeah, so for me, I did go to college, but it was actually my local community college that I went to, and I had some great teachers, and it definitely was very helpful for sure. But I would definitely say that the real education came from the real world, the school of hard knocks, of really trying to work with clients and just write tracks that people liked. And definitely this, in my opinion, is one of those things that if you're going to do it, you're going to do it, period, regardless of kind of the education you have or any of those things. Because in this field, the only thing that matters is, what are you making? How are you to work with? What is your work? So a lot of the other stuff becomes just less relevant and less important. So I guess to answer the question, I'll say that I did have some formal education, but it certainly wasn't as much as other people. And for me, where I really consider my education was in just the deep, raw passion that I have for the work itself, and that this is what I just love to do in my downtime also. So I was just always studying it and always just learning myself.
I love that. That's what fuels many of the greats. So it makes sense. On that note of kind of this being your passion, but also your career, how do you go about kind of splitting the work-life balance and also doing your passion projects versus jobs on Fiverr versus other clients? What does that look like?
Yeah. So basically, whenever I have a client project, it's top priority. So I'm going to be working on it, sending edits, waiting for feedback. But every time I'm either between a client project or I have a project that maybe I'm just waiting for feedback on, I'm working on my own stuff. So I'm
Yep.
basically perpetually between juggling back and forth, both client projects and then personal projects. And what I would call personal, though, is really tracks that I'm kind of finishing for my own private portfolio. That's for my stock store or for music licensing libraries that I work with. So basically, I'm basically constantly working on either a project that somebody has said, here is this amount of money, please make this for me, or I'm making an asset, a track that I can use and then give to somebody who can then monetize it down the line. And so I really think of this is actually a good time for me to touch on something that I think is very important that I thought I was going to talk about later, but I'll just say now, and that is active versus passive income for you as a music composer. In that I really think you need to consider both of these things, because there's definitely some seasons where you can have a bunch of work and some where you don't. So for me, I'm always trying to put fuel in the fire, so to say, to build up the passive side by having tracks that can work for me from music libraries that I'm working with, where if I'm finishing those tracks, a lot of times I might not be getting money up front, but I'm going to get money down the line. And I might not even know which track brings the money, but I'm just making tracks that I love to make. I'm having fun doing it, but I know that they have purpose and utility. So I'm either working on a client project or working on a passive kind of song for another library. I hope that that kind of
Yeah,
answers a little bit or makes some sense.
definitely. I want to, that's something that we'll definitely touch on more. Like you said, I think we'll kind of get to that a bit later. I want to go back to the beginning about starting a project, working as a freelancer, working with clients. I'm sure you and all the producers and composers in the audience know that it's a lot trickier kind of working with the client than it is to just making music you like. So first question is, what do you ask from a client when you first start a project?
Okay, so I'm looking over here because I have just a few notes for things that I didn't want to
Go for
forget.
it.
Yeah, so basically, one of the things that I need to make sure that we're always understanding is the goals of the project, right? So, what is this actually for? Who is doing this? Is this for an individual? Is this more of like an indie scale project, or is it more of a corporate scale project? What is this? Right. So, I need to understand the goals, because that's going to change everything about how I show up to that project. Another thing that we need to understand is, and I just had, oh, yes. So big thing for me is to understand the emotional triggers of this person, right? What do they want it to feel like, right? That's super key, because that's going to inform how I approach, right? So I think another thing is reference tracks, the style, right? So what do they want it to sound like? So for me to kind of bottle this up, I think the biggest thing that I look for, which is like kind of what I think this is kind of asking, the biggest thing I look for is, does this person know what they want, and can they communicate what they want to me? So if this person, the more clear, I should say, the more clear on the outcome that this person wants, the better I can do my job and the easier it will be. I often find that
Right.
when somebody says, I want it to feel like this, I need it for this purpose, and here's reference tracks that I really am inspired by, it's going to be a good project. Almost every
Yeah.
time that's going to rock and roll, because I have clear goals, clear expectation, and I can attack that. It's much more challenging when somebody doesn't have a clear goal. It's just kind of like, well, I just need something for this random video I'm working on, and just kind of do whatever you want. It
Yeah.
might sound easier when someone says do whatever you want, but I have often found, not always, but often found that often actually results in you making something and then them realizing what they don't want. So you'll
Right.
make something and then they realize, oh wait, I actually didn't want it like that. And it's like, okay, well, what did you want? And now you have to go back and forth more. So I hope that didn't skirt around the question too much. I hope that was.
No, no, totally. So before that back and forth, what do you do when that brief might be, not super clear? The goal isn't there. They just say, "Hey, make me something epic for this 2 minute spot." How do you deal with that? And yeah, how do you unpack that?
Yeah, so usually what I will do is send my own reference tracks to them if I can't get anything concrete. So in advance, I'll be
Yeah.
like, okay, that's a great vibe. I totally understand that. I'm pretty confident I'd be able to hit that. But just so I get more clarity on the details of this project, here are 3 tracks that I've picked either from my personal portfolio or from the internet, whatever. Which of these are you most inspired by? So if they're not going to
Right.
nail it down for me, I'm going to try and nail it down for them, because I need to have
Yeah.
a vision, you know?
Yeah, totally. I love that strategy. If they don't provide something, you give it to them, see if it matches.
Yeah, it really helps everybody, right? Because I really do think that, making music, making the music is really only one part of the job. I really think
Yeah.
the real job here, beyond that, is being an interpreter to their vision, right? Because these people are coming to you because they need something that sounds awesome for whatever project they're working on is. And your job is not just like make something cool. I mean, it is, but it's more to really take the time to get your ego out of here about any of that stuff that you think is cool or not cool, and just listen to what they need and really be the interpreter to help that vision come to life. I think something that I've seen, just to piggyback on this a bit, is sometimes somebody might say, like in the past, oh man, I really like this, but I wish it was faster. And as the composer, you might be like, faster. So, oh my God, you're telling me now after all of this, I need to change the BPM? But what they really meant was, can you add more hi-hats? Because what they're really saying is, I need more energy. So a big
Right.
thing is for you to help interpret what they're saying, because your client often is not a musician. They don't really know the language. So that's the real job, I think, is being the interpreter of the vision and just being the servant to help get that out in front of them and being clear about that.
Right. Right. I love that. And you mentioned the concept of kind of dropping your ego, but a lot of the times composers, producers come in with, rich experience, specialization in a few genres. And then you might get a project that's kind of out of your wheelhouse or doesn't let you do what you feel like is your thing. Have you been in that scenario before? And if so, kind of how do you drop your ego, as you say?
Yeah, so this is a multi-answer question, I think. So the first thing that I want to say about, first I'll address the ego bit. The ego loves to fight, doesn't it? It always wants to push back. It always wants to say things that are kind of not helpful. So a lot of times I'll say that when something is particularly challenging, right, or a client has several edits, the gut reaction is to be like, no, like I did it right. What are you talking about? But you got to like suspend that and just realize that what they're communicating, kind of what I was saying before, what they're communicating just simply means there was some kind of misunderstanding on some level that has nothing to do with how good you are. Really has nothing to do with how good you are, so it doesn't need to be a take about that. It's there's something that's miscommunicating in the music itself, and we just need to try and interpret and understand that. And it's no hit to anybody. It's okay. So that's the first thing. I think that the ego literally only gets in the way because it's going to say things that don't help anybody, like I did it right, what they're saying doesn't make sense, all these things that don't serve anybody.
Yeah.
What was the other piece of the question? I wanted to address it. It wasn't about the ego. What was the first piece? I'm sorry.
I addressed most of it, but kind of leaving your ego out the door. I think that's it.
You had said something. I'm sorry. You had said one other thing that I really did want to. I think there was something else that you said first. I'm blanking out. I'm sorry.
No, we'll find a way to squeeze it in. I promise you.
Okay.
In the meantime, though, we got an interesting question from Siegfried about temp tracks. We talked about reference tracks, and this is something that I've struggled with. How do you deal with temp tracks? You have this struggle of, do I copy it? What do I take from it? What do I not? What are your thoughts on that? And maybe also just explain kind of what they are and when they're used.
So temp tracks are right. They're the tracks that the project like typically used, I think, a lot in brand films and things like that, where they already have picked a song. Could be a stock song, could have been a free song on the internet, could be a super popular song. There's just some song already there that they're all used to hearing, basically. So the temp tracks are very tricky, actually, because a lot of times the people who are working on that project get very used to a temp track. So sometimes you can come in, it doesn't matter what you do. They're just not going to like it, or they could like it, but still prefer the temp track because they're familiar with the temp track. And a lot of stuff has been done to the temp track. So I think one way of dealing with it is understand how close to that temp track you want to get, right? So this is coming back to that understanding the expectations and goals of the projects. Are you trying to make something that's really just like this temp track, but like almost a recreation, but with small differences to it to obviously not infringing any copyrights? Or was this just like some kind of thing here and we're going off of a different mood? So first understand how close do we really want to get to that temp track. And the second thing, make it to, if it wants to be close, make it close, but a piece of it is you have to let go sometimes, because I have had times when I've done a whole project and they've been like, hey, you know what? We absolutely love it, but like the higher ups have decided they just want to keep the temp track. So like you did an awesome job. Like you're still getting paid for the work, and you did a great job, and we appreciate it. But just the temp track was what it
Yeah.
was, and that's what it is sometimes.
Yeah, it's a reality of it. That's tough. Um, I want to jump subjects a bit because we're getting a few questions about sync, and I
Mm.
think people are really interested in that, and you of course have a lot of experience in that. So, just from the beginning, kind of broad, what's your advice on getting into the world of sync?
Oh no, this is a deep question.
And also maybe again kind of give a few sentences on what that might look like in terms of what is sync and licensing.
Yeah, sure. So one thing I will say is that I do actually give a lot of tips and stuff I try and post on my Instagram. If you want to follow me at _ Avery Berman, my name, I try and just share projects and stuff there too. And if you come from this, send me a DM. I'd love to know about it. But
You have, maybe if you can find that and put that in the chat, just you have is my colleague here on the.
oh, cool. Yeah, at
Zoom.
_ Avery Berman. So
Awesome.
sync. So first, what is sync, right? Basically, sync is just when you're taking your track or somebody's using your track for a media project, right? Could be anything, could be a TV show, movie, game, brand film, doesn't matter. Your music is, you're getting paid a fee or royalties for your music to be used in a project. That's basically what sync is. There are many different players inside of sync, right? So I think that a few different ways to go about it, just to give a quick broad strokes, is there are music libraries, and I've worked extensively with them. So music libraries are basically middlemen companies that are super connected with music supervisors, and music supervisors are generally the people that are actually making the decision about what music they're actually going to be using. So the reason music supervisors often work closely with music libraries is that music libraries often provide thousands of tracks ready to go, legally cleared, multiple variations, proven professional, that these people can easily just grab, audition, listen, paste into their projects and figure out what works well. It's very convenient for them. So as a composer, it makes a lot of sense as a piece of your work, so to say, to partner with libraries who are relevant for the kind of music that you're working on, the kind of clients that they have, and deliver music to them. So as I was alluding to earlier, that's a piece of what I'm just kind of perpetually doing, is whenever I have downtime or I'm not on a client, I'm going to just work on tracks for a library. So then you kind of trust that the library is going to get these tracks placed. And when they do, you're all going to either make upfront, make backend, or both. That's one aspect of sync. The other aspect is just skipping the library altogether and going straight to supervisors. They both work. Different people have different opinions about what they choose to do. They both can work. You know what I mean? But on that one, it's going to be more about you really showcasing your music very well on clear demo reels. I really enjoy recently getting into Disco, is a great service that can help host your music in a way that's very easy to show it and share it with people, and really curating specific playlists of your music to audition for different people working on things. That's basically the overview, I suppose, of sync, if that's helpful.
Yeah, that's a great overview. On a similar note, you definitely specialize in certain genres or sounds, but Roberta's asked, and sync, is in line with this passive income stream. Are there genres of music that you found bring the most success in your sync work, or other type of passive income streams?
Yeah, so I can only speak for myself, but I think that probably the best answer I really do want to give is the music that you're best at is going to be the music that you should kind of do. I know that's kind of a cop-out answer, but I do want to say that, you really should figure out what your biggest strengths are. But the caveat to that is you need to learn how to make it useful for editors working on projects, right? Because I think one disconnect that often happens, I think, with artists or musicians or composers is that a lot of times we are inspired to make something unique and different and going on this journey with lots of different sections. But contrarily, in sync, often, not always, but often, tracks that have a clear, seamless progression of one idea, one clear concept, taking it from a small piece of its journey up to its climax of that journey, or more of like almost an A kind of climax here, come back down for like a B verse, and climaxing up to your A again, hitting a final climax here, and then a clear outro on a clear theme. This is a big thing. So what I mean is, you should do what you're really good at and what you're inspired by, but position it and arrange it in a clear, simple format that is highly usable so that pieces of it could be taken for projects and it has a seamless flow from start to back without lots of different changes. Obviously, there are exceptions to this rule, but I do think that this is a very good rule that has really helped me a lot.
Totally.
The second piece of this answer to continue on is that after me saying do what you're really good at, I will say that I often do find that tracks that are motivational and action oriented tend to do well, at least in my library. Things that have energy, power up, pumping, driving, action, epic, or motivational, inspiring, because that stuff is great for corporate use and advertising, and then the action stuff is great for almost everything else, like YouTube videos and other kinds of advertising and games and all kinds of stuff. So I do find that those two tend to do pretty well.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You touched on something there about, getting inspired, oftentimes wanting to make something unique, and then ultimately finding this one clear concept and then driving that home, sticking with that. Do you have any tips, pointers, or kind of insights into your workflow on how you find these concepts, how you get inspired, especially someone like you making a lot of different music, a lot of different types of music? What does that look like for you?
So basically the way that I usually do it is, well, again, if it's for a client project, I'm going to be studying the reference tracks and intently listening. What are the kinds of chords being used here? What are the kinds of progressions I'm seeing being used, whether in this reference track or a collection of them? What are the overlaps? Like if I'm studying a style, what notes are being used in the melody? What scale is being used, right? Because major scale, minor scale sounds completely different depending on how you use it and the notes inside of them. So, and I'm sure most of you, I'm sure understand that, but it's just very important to really, I think, build a relationship with the personality of the notes, right? So that you can look at these reference tracks and understand, oh, it feels like this with these notes being used. Therefore, if I would like to recreate something in a similar style, I can use those notes also, but do it in my way. That's the difference. So I think for me, I'm often studying tracks and I'm getting super inspired and kind of like sketching ideas. Sketching is huge for me. I talk about it a lot on my Instagram, actually, where I'm always showing basically take concepts, create concepts, and then pick the best one that really stands out for you and move forward. This could be something in just a basic piano sound, basic drums. You can find a workflow that works, but I think that a lot of people go too deep too quickly in that they kind of just like stumble on whatever their first idea was and try and develop that whole thing into a full song. And that's okay. I mean, that's fine. Sometimes that's awesome. But often I find it to be more efficient to instead sketch several things and then kind of isolate the best emotional match and then develop that one further. So that's one piece of my workflow. And the other piece is getting the hell away from the DAW, because I do think that when you're just staring at the screen in a vacuum, all of these weird thoughts come in and you get so in your head and crazy stuff happens. So two very specific things. Number one, grab visuals, right? So right now I'm actually working on a theme for a cool futuristic racing game that I think is really cool.
Awesome.
And so one thing that I did to get inspired by that, besides the concept art that was sent, was going on YouTube, and I literally typed in futuristic racing game, and I just literally watched footage of futuristic racing gameplay, and I was composing to that. And it helps so much because when you have context for what you're creating, you see the vision so much clearer than just sitting isolated in this zone. And I often find that when you have footage to write to, you also won't overcomplicate your work. And I think a lot of people tend to overcomplicate things because they're stuck in that without a clear vision. And the last tip I'll give is getting away from it. Like if you're really stuck, like I was working on a theme once for an indie game, and I was really struggling with what it was going to be. And so what I did was I walked away, and then I picked up my guitar. I have one there. I have another guitar over here. I picked up that guitar. I turned away from my DAW, and I just started like noodling around on different melodies. And all of a sudden this melody came, and I was like, that's it. That's the melody. And then I brought it into my DAW, and then I began developing it, and then it was there. So when I was just like really trying to get in, I was really struggling on this one. But when I stepped away, returned to the human aspect of an instrument, and just kind of noodled on that, it it happened. I kind of let go and allowed it to come through on something outside of the whole technical side.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think a really important part of that is kind of optimizing your DAW or your space or just in general your process in allowing you to have these areas to experiment. You have your guitar on that side, a guitar on that side. So don't make it a burden to just, all right, let me turn around, let me have some fun. I think that's super important for staying creative and keeping the project going.
Definitely, you want to optimize your workflow or your workspace for sure. And we can talk a little bit about that if you want.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'd love to hear a bit about your space and what you do to yeah, optimize your workflow for it.
Yeah, so my space has been definitely a living organism that I continually like play with and see what feels good. But right now, I'm quite happy with the way it is right now. But I think for me, the biggest part, well, I'll kind of speak to what my space is. So I have monitor here, keyboard right here in front of me, my microphone, obviously, guitar over here, guitar over here. I also have a TV right there on my wall, and my monitor's right here. And so basically, oh, also a really cool thing that I like about my space is this is a stand-up desk also, and I have a treadmill, which you can see the bottom of it right there. Amazing. I have a treadmill there that I just recently got, and oh my God, this is a game changer. Amazing. Like I put my desk up, I move that treadmill, I'm literally walking it because I know that a lot of, I'm sorry to talk over you. I'm sorry. But I'll just get this thought out. I know that a lot of us, we sit all day long. And as soon as I was doing this, now I'm walking for hours and I don't even notice it. And it's not hard. People often ask, like, how are you walking and working? It's really not that hard. You just go slow. And slow walking is better than just sitting. So that's been awesome.
I love that. And I got to say just quick that this week in our Fiverr HQ, they're doing a contest for whoever walks the most steps. Gets cool. Some prizes. And Yoav here, who was on the chat, he I think is in 8th place right now. If I had to guess, he's probably walking during this call. So yeah, walking.
So how do I get in? How could I get in?
He's sitting. Okay.
Oh, he's sitting.
Love it.
Definitely here.
Closes tomorrow. Cool. But I mean, I could talk about the kind of the setup for a while, but
I do want to say. Can I say one more really quick thing about it? I just want to say that I prioritize workflow over a lot of other things. So I just know that, like, for me, I don't have a crazy vocal boost setup. I have a very simple setup by design because I need speed, efficiency, inspiration. And the more steps I need to take to get to the tools that I like, the more that inspiration is just going to leave me. So I will happily take a small cut on some kind of quality metric, some kind of subjective quality metric often, if it means that I'm working quickly, can get more concepts out and can do it on time. And so for me, I'll take workflow efficiency over arbitrary quality. That's not to say that I'm making crap, of course, but it is to say I prioritize workflow and efficiency.
So we talked about how that looks like in the room. What about in the box, in your DAW?
So in the DAW,
templates, what does that look like?
That's exactly what it is. It's absolutely templates. I have a lot of cool tricks that I do. One of them in particular is I have a template setup that is all of my favorite instruments. Like the moment I load it up, I've got all my favorite instruments ready to go. You know, Omnisphere, Nexus, Serum, Contact. So my favorite instruments just ready to go, all loaded up already with buses preset, 1 bus for delay, 1 bus for reverb. And then I also have, which I think is the secret weapon really, that I really don't see many other people talk about, is I have like 10 or maybe even more at this point buses track setup with battery. So I use battery is my drum sampler that I really like. Doesn't matter what drum sampler you use, I just like battery. And what I've done is I have one sampler completely dedicated to kicks, and I have picked my favorite kicks from different styles, and it's just a battery stuffed with kicks, and then one for snares, and I have it stuffed with snares.
I love that.
One for claps, stuff, et cetera, down the line, toms, hi-hats, claps, all of these elements. And you can kind of customize it as you continue to just refine what you like. But what this means for me is I can open up a project and instantly start creating a drum beat in any different kind of style and do it already pre-broken up so I can mix it easily. I can just like put my pattern out and then sort through my favorite sounds. And boy, oh boy, does that make a huge difference. I also have some effects preloaded, so I gotta go. So I make that template go time, you know, fast.
Amazing. On a similar note, you're touching on your sounds. Thane Scott asked a few minutes ago. He asked specifically, what are your go-to sounds or arrangement for energy and momentum? I think, you answered some of it with setting up your go-to sounds, but do these templates or your go-to samples, first of all, where do you find them? Now it sounds like maybe you're not looking for them anymore. You have your favorites. But Dane is asking kind of what are your go-to sounds and how do you find them?
Yeah, so definitely it's a living thing that you continually improve and you continually find. So you're kind of always a little bit on the lookout for what's fresh and hot right now, while trying to avoid the trendy stuff, because a lot of stuff is trendy that might not necessarily be longevity. So I'll just speak that I definitely think the answer to that question lies in what is the style, right? So if we're making electronic and EDM, in my opinion, right, people have their favorite stuff, but my favorite stuff, I love Nexus, 100%. I love Nexus, and I love Serum. And I find that between Nexus and Serum, I can write awesome EDM tracks all day long with only those two things. Nexus even for drums, straight up, it's awesome. So Nexus and Serum for EDM. For any kind of real orchestration work that needs real instruments, I mean, it's Contact all day long. I love the Complete Ultimate bundle. Obviously, some of the stuff they have now is awesome. I love their acoustic guitar, their electric guitar. I also use an awesome electric guitar from, shout out to Solemn Tones. If you just search Solemn Tones, I have an awesome drum kit that I've used, and their guitar called the Odin. And if you use my name, by the way, Avery, you can get, I think, 15% off. It was just because I kept sending a bunch of people there because I always would post things with them and people say, what's that guitar? And I said, oh, it's the Odin. And the owner was like, yeah, people can use your name and then get a discount. So if you like it, I mean, you got to reamp it though. Just know you got to amp it. So it's, you got to make your own amp on it, but I'm dropping a bunch of stuff. And then the next piece is for cinematic stuff, you might, like for true orchestral stuff, that's where stuff can get expensive. You might need to make investments in larger scale libraries that are dedicated. But I would say for all purpose stuff, Nexus, Serum, Complete Ultimate, Omnisphere every once in a while. And those are probably my main toolkits, with other stuff that I kind of grab depending on the project. Like I once got an 8-bit, specifically 8-bit plugin, but that's probably the main stuff. Yeah,
cool. Love that little cheat sheet. I have most of those, but some good ones that I've been wanting to add. We're getting jumping topics here for a sec. We're getting a few questions about legal issues or the topic of commercial licenses and just in general copyrights. So Nick asks specifically, how do you deal with legal stuff? He provides commercial license to everybody on Fiverr, and he feels like maybe that's not sufficient. Maybe he's not covering all his bases. At the same time, I'm going to kind of combine to Kataria. Sorry, I can't pronounce your name. I won't try, but they ask if you register the copyright for tracks that were made on Fiverr, and if you do something with that, or you just hand it over to the client. What's your process for that?
So this is one that whenever it comes to legal stuff, I always make that asterisk of like, I'm not a lawyer and like, I don't know all of the stuff with that. And sometimes I consult with somebody also. So nothing I say can be taken legally, that little asterisk.
Good call.
But so for me, I usually don't really worry about it that much. Actually, I typically assume that they're going to buy out the copyright. Often, if we don't talk about it, I'll kind of retain it. But often people do. I kind of assume, because me coming from a background of doing a lot of ghost production, that's kind of part of the gig a lot of the times. Like you're selling the work and they're going to own the work, and then you can make separate agreements about royalties, residuals, money that comes in. So even though I might be selling the copyright, I still can retain some kind of percentage ownership over money. If that conversation doesn't come up, I'm just going to own the copyright. But to be totally honest with you, it's not something I think about super often. Could that be something maybe I even optimize? Probably, but I just don't really, to me, my main concern, do the work, do it well, have a happy client, get them to keep coming back. To me, that's what's most important. And I also know that what I do discuss is, can I share this work? What rights do I have to share the work? Is this a private thing? Do I need to keep this under wraps, or can I share it? Because to me, what's most important, can I use this in my demo reel to get more clients later on? That's what's important to me. Basically, what rights do I have? Is there going to be royalties associated with that? And am I going to get a piece of those royalties, those things? So I would say that, unless they're trying, I guess my general blanket generic answer would be, find out if they want the copyright. Some people straight up say, I need the copyright. And you say, I'm doing a gig like that right now, actually, where someone straight up said, I need the copyright. And I said,
Yeah.
okay. So
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that's somewhat of a half answer, not a, but that's just
No,
what I know.
I think that philosophy makes a lot of sense, and it simplifies things for many cases. You talk about this question to your clients: Can I share this work? Can I add it to my demo reel? There's a lot of people that, obviously it's super important to highlight what you've done, especially if it's a big job, something you're proud of. A lot of people are struggling to kind of get this first project. Juan asks, yeah, he's interested in making music for video games, but he hasn't gotten that big job yet. Just kind of smaller games. What's the best way, in your opinion, to find video game projects to work on? And how do you get into video game composition?
Yeah. Okay. So big thing. This is kind of good advice that can kind of cross over to literally any kind of work you want to do, period. And that is a principle that I like to talk about a lot is number one, and a lot of the stuff is like the generic stuff, but it is the true stuff in my experience. And that is you need to do the work you want to do before you can do the work you want to do. So what I mean by that is if you want to score to video games, you got to, and I don't know if you are or you aren't, so this is just my general advice, you need to go to YouTube, grab clips from games and score to them. So I actually read an interview once. Some people ask, is that legal? Can I do that? Well, again, I'm not a lawyer, but I will say that I did read an article from a Blizzard supervisor when was asked how should people get in front of you if they are game composers. He said, I want to see your music in my games. So take clips of my games and score to them and show it to me. That's a paraphrase, but that's what I got across from it. So basically he was saying, I want to see what you can do in the context of real situations. So if you want to do game work, if you want to do corporate work, if you want to do brand work, it doesn't really matter what kind of work you want to do. It's the same. You got to grab those projects by yourself, score to it like you were getting paid for it, do several of those projects, take your best ones, present it clearly on a website that is just showing what you can do on that demo reel. And then I think you have a few different approaches from that point. Approach number one, or both of these. Approach number one is begin to demonstrate your work and the pieces of your work through social media. Like I know that the other people today were talking about, but it's true, right? Yep. Showcase pieces of your work on social media. That is like a business card. When people go there, they should see, oh, this is what this person does. I can see what their quality is, right? And then you can go, not necessarily to become viral or become big. It really doesn't matter how many followers you have. I actually consulted somebody once to help them get into library music, and they got into a library through Instagram and they had like 400 followers because they followed this. They demonstrated their work clearly, and then they went to music libraries by finding them and started genuine conversations with those people, asking about their needs and getting onto phone calls to then begin serving to them, find how they could be of service. So that applies to music libraries, but it's the same with game developers. You need to show clearly what you can do and then get real relationships, right? Not where you're like, hi, I'm a game composer, please hire me. Like, yo, Brent, I saw what you worked on your game. I like really enjoyed that. You know, I'd love to learn more about what you work on. Treat it like a mixer. Like if you were in the real world going to a meetup and, you know, you got the punch table and the cookies and all that stuff and the name tags, that's social media, you know? So go and talk to people without the desperation, with the quest to learn about what they are doing and how you can help them, and if you can help them, because a lot of people don't need help yet, and that's okay. Yeah. You want to sow the seeds for relationships in the industry that you want to work in by being friendly, by being a service-oriented individual, and clearly demonstrating what you can do. And if you are doing that and then continually reaching out to new people in that way, well, the only option is eventually someone's going to want to hire you, right? As long as you're doing this, eventually, I can't tell you when it will happen, how many will happen, but eventually that can happen. And then you use the work that you do for them to continue the chain going. So that's the one piece, which is kind of like doing it through social media. The other piece of it is you can also do what I like to call the sniper approach. And that is do the same thing, set up the demo reel, set it on your website, but then just like snipe out relationships with people in organizations that you might want to work with. So this is more applicable to music libraries and music production houses, supervisors. Set up something for them and then just email them. Hey, I love what you've done, right? Compliment them. Hey, I love what you've done here. my name is this, I'm a composer, here's some work that I've done based on what you've seen before. I feel that this might be a match for some of your clients, would love to learn more about what you're looking for. Thanks so much. So just go right to them and know that this is proverbial door knocking. And like in the real world, like anything else, you're going to get most people that don't respond. And that is okay. Because if you're doing it in this way, eventually somebody will. And then you can use that to bolster your entire experience, to bolster your demo reel, and also do a great job. They can come back for more. I've had clients that have been with me for literal years. Like, and that's something that people, I don't know, think about as much, but once you get a few clients, sometimes you can kind of chill, depending on the client, of course, but sometimes clients have a lot of repeat work. And so sometimes you get a good client, you just kind of chill and they're just going to keep sending you stuff. So yeah, I hope that was helpful.
Very. And it also speaks on a lot of, if there are still people here that were in the previous sessions, Trevor said something very similar, Zach before him, about building your identity, marketing on TikTok. It takes, consistency, and doing these things. I like to say doing these things that don't scale are often the things that result in the most success. So, knocking on doors, sending emails, that's kind of what needs to be done in a lot of situations. So it's really good advice. I want to look at the opposite of that though. So all of your things that you were mentioning now were kind of the active ways of bringing people in, maybe making a custom demo of like, hey, I want to work on this game. So I take a clip from the game and score it. On the other side, there's a place like Fiverr where you can make a demo, a video that lives on your gig, and people can pass by, people browse, and they find you. What would you say is important to have in that demo video? How would you make it appeal to kind of the widest range of audiences, or how would you target in on the specific audience that you're looking to attract? What's your strategy for that?
Yeah, so I mean, this is a living, breathing thing. I think that I'm always kind of playing with different ideas, but in general, I think, right, be very clear to a type of work. Like, I will compose soundtrack for your video game, right? Or I mean, I don't personally do this, but something I have thought about, excuse me, is like, I will compose a level theme for your 2D platformer, right? Something specific. So I think you can go for general versus specific. And I don't know what will work best, but I think that they are two different approaches that you can take. And specific will obviously hit on people searching for that specific thing. And general can kind of like float to the top, I assume, if you do really good. So for us, we just say like, I'm going to compose awesome music for your video game, or I'm going to compose awesome music for your video. And then for the demo reels, we focus on, what we have done is we've created different playlists of our different music. So different types of music. So we have one playlist that's like rock music, power up music, one that's like more fantasy, ambient, cinematic music, one that's more kind of quirky. I think we have a quirky one. So we kind of have different playlists that highlight different kinds of music, and then just smash our best tracks together. And this is something that I do a lot on my website also, where I don't just have like a song, and I don't just have like a list of songs. I want you to know within seconds that I'm good at what I do. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to take some of my most coolest parts of my songs, and I'm going to just mash it together in one 90-second clip. Right. So when you click play, right, every 10 seconds or whatever, you're hearing a new thing that you can be like, oh yeah, that's pretty good. Or like, that's what I'm looking for, So I think that, I just think that's a cool way to go about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a good strategy. We're getting two questions here. Again, I'm kind of jumping all around. We go to one thing and then the other. I hope everyone's okay with the different topics, but we're getting two questions in the chat about again, kind of this work-life balance. So one question about, how do you avoid getting stuck and not kind of getting burnt out during music production sessions, and maybe what your workflow looks like to not get stuck, but at the same time, how do you handle just the 8-hour work days, or kind of this need to bunker down and go hard? Do you have any tips on best ways to navigate that?
I think I do. So one thing I'll say is that this is definitely something that you need to figure out for yourself, because we're all different individuals, and work life, right? I mean, my work is kind of my life a little bit, like I love music. I love making music. So it's what I like to do. But I will say this, what I think is very practical is sometimes you don't feel it. It's normal. Sometimes you just don't feel it. And
Yeah.
so what I like to do when that's happening is I specifically don't work on music. I work on everything else. So all the stuff that I was just talking about, like making a demo reel, making those 90-second teasers, reaching out to people on social media or cold emailing them, working on your website, all these things, I am not, whenever I'm like not feeling the mojo, so to say, just really not, that's what I'm doing. So I'm kind of trading off back and forth. And I'm sorry that I'm maybe not addressing the life part. I'm still addressing the business part, but I guess I'll get to that. So basically what I'm saying is that you don't always have to be on, and that's okay to not always be on, but try to always do something productive anyway, where that can push you forward in other regards. And the other piece is, sometimes you just, I probably have not been balanced. I'll just be honest. Like, I think in my history, I have not been balanced. This is what I have obsessively done for many years. And I will say that now at this point, I do have more balance, thanks to certain people in my life helping me get that, actually. But where now I can turn off a bit, and I'll do the things I like. Like, I'll play video games, which I really enjoy playing video games because I like composing for video games. I also enjoy playing video games. So just played some Hollow Knight. I always enjoy coming back to Doom. I just beating Doom Eternal on Nightmare right now, so sometimes I take a break, try and rejuvenate the mojo, so to say. But I guess what I'll say is I'm kind of trading off feeling whatever energy I have, whether it's creative mojo or like businessy mojo, if you will. And I'm following that. And then as I follow that, I let the other one kind of build up again. And then when that creative mojo is like, I am ready to go, well, then I'm swapping back to that. And I think that naturally there are times when I just kind of shut off and then live my life, so to say, make dinner, you know what I mean? But I know that I think it should be said also, I don't necessarily work in such a concrete way where it's like, 9 to 5, that's when I work. I just work when I work, and I get it done. I think that's kind of all I have to say. I get it done, and when it's done, I can do what I want. And that's kind of what I do.
Totally. And I think it's important to say that, of course, that might work for one person. Another person has to be super on schedule, kind of set timelines for themselves. But I think the trick is finding what pattern works for you. And so you clearly found that this kind of back and forth and not setting yourself kind of time limits or timing things, that's the way it works.
And I will say also that I think, like, it really is something that I think you need to play with, because in my past, I have played with a lot of different things. I have played with set time limits, and it doesn't really work for me personally. I just don't like it. I like to allow myself to do what it is that I'm feeling inspired to do, and just do it. And so obviously sometimes that can't be a thing. Obviously sometimes, like Fiverr, for example, right? I got a clock, I got a countdown, got to get this thing done. You know what I mean? And so sometimes when I prioritize things, you got to prioritize them, and you got to feel that energy. Sometimes I meditate, right? Sometimes if I'm really not feeling it, I got to take a break. I got to sit, I got to close my eyes, and I got to recenter and just think like, okay, like, yeah, that's right. I enjoy this. Like, what can I enjoy about getting into this right now? What is something that I'm inspired from this right now? And kind of recenter. And if the work needs to get done, you'll get the work done. And then when you're done, you can do something else. And I hope that's somewhat helpful.
Yeah, totally. For me, it is. I have two questions about sound design.
Okay.
First one is from Miguel from Barcelona. He simply asks, what are your thoughts on Splice? Do you use it? Any advice digging for samples?
Yeah. I love Splice. Splice is awesome. I recommend it to basically everybody. Honestly, I don't know why you wouldn't use Splice, but specifically for drums. So for me, I avoid all the melody loops, things like that, right? For me, basically a big no-no in general for most projects. Melody loops, no-go, especially for library music, things like that. I avoid any pre-written things like that. So for me, Splice is purely my drum haven, so to say. If I need some new hot trap drums, you better believe I'm going to Splice, and I'm seeing whatever the top kits are for trap right now. If I need some dubstep drums, you better believe I'm going to that Virtual Riot kit or whatever's hot in Splice. I'm going to go through that. If I need some acoustic drums, well, I actually have some kits I really like that I kind of go to now. But I think that best way to view it is that, especially for contemporary electronic, pop, or hip hop in particular, Splice is a no-brainer. If you're working on a lot of acoustic music with kits, I do think that you can get like a few kits that are kind of pre-made kits and just kind of roll with them and get good at them. And I also do think that for cinematic or orchestral music, kind of similar, you can kind of find percussive samples and libraries that do the job. But for specifically, I think modern EDM, electronic, hip hop, things, pop, things like that, Splice is fantastic.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree that it's good for maybe a specific type of thing. And I got to give a quick shameless Fiverr plug. In my music production over the past year or two, I've actually come to Fiverr and worked with session musicians for custom sample packs. If I needed, I needed a few weeks ago this super dry sounding drum set. Couldn't find it on Splice. Went got a custom pack from an
Sick.
awesome drummer. So awesome hack, and yeah, super useful for your sound design.
That's awesome. Like I actually have a student right now I'm working with who he's making packs for actually Illmind. Well, there's new stuff coming out. And so basically he's making a pack right now for some cool stuff right now that I thought was very cool. So that's really cool that you're basically talking about making packs that you are buying from individuals, because let's also just kind of twist that around and realize that what he is saying is that you as a composer producer can also offer that. Right. And I do think that ties into that idea of like, you always want to be thinking about how can I provide value from my skill set? That's something that I'm always thinking about, because we don't only have to get locked into that paradigm of like must compose for these custom gigs. Like that's great. I enjoy that. But you can also educate. You can also create sample packs for your fellow musicians. You can also I know somebody who does drum tracks for people where like they'll just contact him and he just makes a drum track for them. People do all kinds of things. And part of what I think is so beautiful about today is that you can do that. You can do almost anything as long as you do that. If you know what I mean, like show up and do that and approach people that you do that. And there will be people who need that. As long as you've looked to the market and seen that there is a need for that thing, you can do almost anything. And that's cool. I think that's cool.
Definitely. Sticking on sound design, Thane asks, what sort of balance do you use between making sounds feel human and artificial? So he gives an example of crafting a hi-hat pattern with dynamic changes, panning, or brass or guitars, and making a pluck or horn feel authentic. So a lot of different things. You're working with, sample libraries, different things. How do you go about taking these samples and making them feel human?
Yeah. So tricky answer for this one again, because unfortunately the asterisk on every question like that is, well, what was the reference? Right. So like, was the reference human? Right. Like, or was the reference digital? You know what I mean? But I understand what you're really saying is, how do you make it sound good? Right. So let's look to the reference. Like, so for example, a lot of trap, let's take trap, for example. If we're making trap hi-hats, for example, because I think we're talking hi-hats, right? We just observe, typically that's going to be not necessarily in the humanization of the velocities of those hi-hats, but instead in the interlocking patterns between several different hi-hat samples. That is the key metric to focus on to make it feel like it belongs in that world. So I think a better way to ask this question actually is, instead of saying human, we should say, how do we make it feel like it belongs in the world that it wants to be in? And so trap, like, so right, again, have one hi-hat that's more bright, one that's more chunky, one that's more open, and layer several together to get that really cool interlocking pattern, and you don't have to worry that much about velocity. On the contrary, if you're working with orchestral music, you have to worry a lot about velocity. And because, if you have this drum pattern of the same velocity, dun, 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 that's not nearly as good as like boom, 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 boom. And that's velocity. So you want to ask, what style am I working on? And what is the key metric that's important for me to get the sound that belongs into that world? Is it velocity or is it something else? And then work within those boundaries. I hope that's helpful.
Definitely. As we're getting pretty close to the wrap up, I want to just kind of zoom out a bit. So you have a bunch of different streams of revenue that you're working on. You're working on your sync on Fiverr. I'm forgetting some, but just the tip of the iceberg.
There's several.
You also mentioned, too many. You also mentioned ghost production. Curious, we got a question earlier And also, when we started, you explained that you had your own band, a bit of kind of your own artist projects here and there, if I'm not mistaken. What do you do if you ever create something and you might want to use that for a different project or for your own personal project, something that you're just super proud of, and maybe you don't feel like it belongs in that project? What do you do?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I definitely do think that obviously you will do that also as a passionate creator. You will work on things also that you're like, wow, this is just for me. I love this. So I think that for me, the way that I think about it is if you feel that you need an outlet where you can share your personal creativity, you should create that outlet. And you could do that on YouTube. You could do it SoundCloud, YouTube, TikTok, doesn't
Yeah.
matter. If you feel that you need an outlet for that personal thing, you should make it and you should do whatever the hell you want. But I think that for me, the way that I think about it is I really work to ask myself, how can I make things that I am inspired by that are also useful for somebody
Right.
else? So coming back to that actual original thing where I was saying you should do what you're really good at, I think the way that I've kind of worked with that is I get super inspired. A lot of times I'll be like listening to different music and just seeing what's out there. And all of a sudden something grabs my ear. I'm really inspired. I'm going to go make that. I'm going to go write
Mm.
that, something like that in my way. And that fills me up to do that. That inspires me. And then
Yeah.
I'm going to try and also arrange it in these ways that I know is functional so that I can repurpose it. So for me, repurposing all of my creative juices in some way is what I try and focus on. And I also acknowledge and know that not everything I make will be the hit. And I think that's a really big thing. In fact, probably most things I make won't be the hit. And that's okay. So I think the way I say it is do what you want. You gotta let that out, go let that out. And just know that that might not be the hit, and take the payment in the form of whatever that is, for the heart, for you feeling like that fulfilled that thing in your soul, or the comments. If just one person like, man, that was really cool, like that's payment also in a different way. So I
Yeah.
think understand that not everything is always about just the direct monetary compensation for it, and you definitely are, as a creative person, should express yourself and have an outlet to do that. And if possible, try and repurpose everything you can into some way, even if you know that that's not going to be the thing that makes lots of money. It can still result in some trickle, and trickles add up, you know.
Totally. Totally. I love that. And on that note, unfortunately, we have to wrap it up for the day. Do you have any closing words or something,
Oh man,
what
we
you're
could go
working
on
on
forever,
next?
man.
Or I know this
Yeah.
this really could be forever.
I mean, honestly, I think that, like, if I had to give like some super direct stuff, to get work, things like that, it would be kind of what I was saying before about just some practical advice again, right? Find what inspires you, score that kind of work, and begin representing yourself on a very clear website. Understand that it's not necessarily about your whole story and all these things that you say, as far as like when you're when you're approaching somebody, right? It's about what you can do and clearly demonstrating that. So I think that a lot, and the reason I'm bringing that up is I do think that a lot of people get the ego thing again, thinking that it's about all of these things like, I don't have any awards, so I can't do anything, or I don't have any placements, so
Right.
nobody will care about me. No, no. What are you doing? That's all anybody cares about. You don't necessarily get work because you have gotten work or because you have awards. That stuff can help, but that's not ultimately why anybody is really hiring you. Well,
Yeah.
maybe asterisk sometimes, but usually not. They're hiring because they see your work and you're good at what you do and you got in front of the right person. So I really think just share what you're doing and realize the value in what you have as a creator, and don't compare yourself to other people. This is a
Mm.
journey, right? This is something that if you love doing this work, you're going to do this work. And whether you're getting paid now, getting paid later, however it is, right? I'm not going to speak to the amounts. What I'm going to speak to is, if you love this, you need to be doing this, and you need to share what you're doing openly and proudly, and not compare yourself to all these other people. Be in your own world, because you can create your own world. So share what you do it openly, connect with new people, be friendly, be problem solving, clearly demonstrate what you can do, and you can create something really cool for yourself. And that's what I want to say, I guess.
Amazing. Amazing way to wrap it up and wrap up the day. And I just want to say a few words. First of all, thank you so much, Avery. This has
Oh
been
yeah.
awesome, and seeing lots of thank yous in the chat. So
Oh, good. I'm
so
glad.
many people love this. Um, if you do want to connect with people and talk to others that are maybe in a similar position, we have a few places for that, and one is the music and audio section of our forum. So I'm going to be posting that in the chat. I'm also posting Avery's Fiverr, so you can check out his gigs. If you do need music, he's there. And his socials are there too. He's an awesome Instagram, awesome TikTok. So definitely be sure to go give him a follow, and Avery, you're open to them reaching out to you if
Yeah,
with
tell me
any.
you came from this, and I appreciate that you watched this, and I hope that you got a little bit of value from this.
Awesome. I think a lot of value for sure.
Good.
Awesome. So thank you again so much, Avery, and thank you guys all for coming. We'll definitely do this again. I'm also on the forum there, so if you did like this, want to do more, right there, and I'll see it, and we'll be sure to do more of these.
Cool. Thank
So
you so
thank
much,
you,
Adam,
everyone.
also for hosting me, and everybody for watching. And at _Avery Berman, I'd love to see you there. Thank you so much, everybody.
Have a great rest of your day, everyone.